hate organics.
Bond. James Bond.
Hello, and everybody, welcome to tonight's Shakin and Not Stirred, where we dig deep into the great James Bond. Me and my co-host Adam. How are you doing out here tonight?
I'm doing pretty well, sir. How are you holding up in these nice cold temperatures?
Oh, staying warm with some amazing movies. I'll be honest with you. I've been watching some really, really good ones lately. One I just watched. I wanted to catch it at the theater. I did not catch it, but was Eddington. I don't know if you've seen that movie yet. With
No.
Shakin and Pedro Pascal. I thought it was a very interesting movie, and I'm
not going to lie. I kind of read the synopsis on it, so I kind of already know what happens. But
yeah,
I do want to see it.
I'm just curious at your thoughts, more at like story, more at like the performances from the actor, especially Shakin. I like him a lot, and I think he did a really good job at what he was going for in the movie. But what have you watched lately?
Well, besides a bunch of Bond movies on Pluto and bunch of college football, I've been watching Ken Burns' American Revolution on and off. Because every time I start watching an episode, it's late and I have to go to bed and I fall asleep. Then a lot of it plays without me seeing it, so I have to get up and like the next day rewind, watch some more. I mean, it's like 6 episodes long, and I'm only like 4 episodes into it over a handful of weeks because I keep like passing out and having to go back and repeat myself. But it's a pretty awesome documentary, as you know, pretty much all the Ken Burns ones are. So that's pretty much all I've been watching.
You going to be watching the Big Ten Championship on Saturday?
Yeah.
Who you got?
I'm coming home, and I'm hoping for the Hoosiers.
Yeah,
but I obviously
my brother-in-law is going to the game. He's got.
Oh, is he really?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, obviously, Ohio State's going to be a tough takedown, but I'm hoping the Hoosiers can do it, and I'm hoping these guys can get into the playoffs. So,
yes. What I think is really cool, just to go on the music front real quick, is that their AC/DC is coming to Notre Dame this summer to play. That would be ridiculous to be sitting in Notre Dame Stadium watching AC/DC. Just as that goes.
They've hosted a lot of musical acts.
Yeah. A lot more country, but thinking a band from Australia who's been around from 1972 just sold out Soldier Field recently, and making their way to Notre Dame. So that's pretty cool.
Which holds 20,000 more people than Soldier Field does. So,
see, I didn't even know the numbers on that. I know Soldier Field's like the smallest or second to smallest stadium in the.
It's the smallest since they did the renovation. Yeah, it's the smallest one now, unfortunately. That's not going to change. They get a new one.
No, that's true. That is true. But tonight we are here for the 14th James Bond film and the 7th, and sadly, I can't tell you how sad I am, final Roger Moore James Bond movie. A View to Kill. So let's get started at where we are before this all gets going.
It is a dark day. We have come to our last Roger Moore film, unfortunately. And he's done, he did 7 of them. So, 7 movies from now will pretty much be into the Daniel Craig films. And then that's fine. But it's just, Roger Moore's obviously, I've discussed many times on here, is my favorite. And he's always been my favorite. And most people, are Connery people, and that's fine. But Roger Moore is my guy. And it's sad that this is the last one. But His time as Bond was marked with a lot of campiness, a lot of zaniness, as I've said 1,000 times, and this one's no different. So you said fresh eyes on it recently as well, and it's as ridiculous as it gets. Maybe not in the grand scale like Moonraker or something like that, but it's definitely as crazy, if not crazier, than Octopussy, and it's still a good time. What do you think about this one and comparing to the other Moore films?
Well, I really love Moonraker. I really like The Spy Who Loved Me. I This one though, I have to be honest with you, is probably close to one of my favorites. It's probably in my top 3 Bond movies for a different kind of reason, and it's a reason we've talked about on a lot of these Bond movies, and I was just watching it, is it feels 80s, like, right out of the gate in the movie, and, like, Octopussy didn't feel as 80s as this feels, and Octopussy's in the 80s. Like, this really, I mean, I don't know if it's the cool Duran Duran song in the beginning, which we'll get to later, but there was a little zaniness to it too, which reminds me of some action movies that were going on at the time. Just pretty much Bond dipping his feet in some good ridiculousness. What I'm going to point out before you get started here is that I put it on Pluto, and there was a disclaimer. This was the first. There was a disclaimer before the movie. I don't know if you've ever seen this.
It's something. I have something to say about that, actually. Yeah.
It said pretty much. You pretty much say it better to me because I don't really remember verbatim. It was pretty much along the lines of Zoran or any other characters aren't for real people, pretty much real depictions of real people.
Yeah, they're not intended to depict real companies, people. So I'll just jump. I'll do that one real quick. That was one of my little trivia things. So, excuse me. The reason why they did that was because, oddly enough, there was a Zoran Industries. It was spelled Zoran.
Oh,
and it was a microchip company in Silicon Valley, for real. So they had to put that in there as a disclaimer.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's the only Bond movie that has a disclaimer like that beforehand. You never, because it's something like, the hell was, you see it and you're like, what? I'm like, all right, you have no idea why that would be on there, or that's the only movie that does that. So, but that's the reason why. And I actually have my it's hard to see because the color is kind of faded, my Zorn Industries shirt here.
Oh yes,
that
yes,
my brother bought me this years ago, and it is tight on me now. It's like a medium, and it's the sun's gotten to it quite a bit. It's not quite as white as it used to be, but I pulled it out for this one because Max Zorn is a great villain, and he is a megalomaniacal psychopath, and Christopher Walken is perfect for that. Anywho, so yeah, it's 1985 now, and it's the first Bond movie, like you said, that kind of really feels 80s. The first two, For Your Eyes Only and Octopussy, really didn't feel 80s. I mean, it's not like someone's not going to believe they were made in the 80s, but they didn't, have the 80s vibe to them that everyone kind of has come to know. So the budget on this one was about $30 million, and it had a big budget because Octopussy did very well. And it went up against, as we discussed in the last episode, Sean Connery came back to do a Bond film, Never Say Never Again. And that was for Kevin McClory's production company. And so it's going up against Albert Broccoli's Eon Productions. So they made their own Bond film with Connery. And then, obviously they got Roger Moore to come back for Octopussy because they didn't want to be beaten to death at the box office by Sean Connery. And it couldn't have worked out better for Albert Broccoli because they kicked the living shit out of Never Say Never Again at the box office. Never Say Never Again did very well, but Octopussy did way better. So,
no, real quick before you go on,
okay,
is Moore older than Connery? Is that correct?
Yes.
He does not look it at all. That's why I wanted to point it out, especially.
No,
but go on.
But he starts looking old in this movie.
He does. He's not no young spring bird. He's not young.
You're right. So his first movie, Live and Let Die, you know, he was already in his 40s when he started it. So now he is when they filmed this, he was 57. When it came out, he was when it was released, he would turn 58. So what you're seeing in this film is a 57-year-old 57-year-old Roger Moore. Now, and you have to take this into account too. A 57-year-old now does not look the same as a 57-year-old then, unless he lived like a pretty rough life. But like 57 years old in the 80s or prior to that, we do this all the time. Where you'd be like, oh my God, this guy's only 40 years old. Look at him in this movie. Looks like he's 60. So Roger Moore looked older than 57. Dude still looked good, but he looked like he was in his 60s or something, probably like that. Someone's grandfather. And before this was filmed, he had some plastic surgery done. He had some facial work done. He had that mole of his removed on his face. You can see throughout every other movie. And he got a little bit lifted, especially like on his forehead. Because if you look at him in this movie, his eyes are very just like, they're just very open a lot more for some reason. I don't know why they, you know, either way, they are. His hair is kind of up and, you know, so he's got the larger forehead. It just made him look, you know, a lot older. But either way, they paid him $7.5 million to come back, which at that time was just an obscene amount. So you remember, you know, back when we're doing You Only Live Twice and Diamonds Are Forever, like they gave Connery like obscene amounts of money just to come back because he was so popular. Roger Moore had that status now, and they wanted him to come back and do this film, and he did for $7.5 million. How do you turn that down? Yeah. But he even admitted, you know, he was way too old for this, and it shows in the film, and with the Bond girls that surround him. It just looks kind of weird, man. He doesn't have, you know, the chemistry with any of them really, but it's beyond that. That's the least of the crazy thing about this movie. But it was still a fun movie. Like I always, you know, this is known if you talk to Bond experts. And people who are like connoisseurs of the whole franchise, this is usually on the bottom of their lists in movies. Oh, yeah. But I take it like, okay, it's like, hey, let's pretend Casino Royale or Skyfall or From Russia with Love or Goldfinger is Rocky. This is like a Rocky 4. Yeah. So assumption. It may not be the best film, but it is certainly more fun. You know, so it's
me and you sitting down on a like going to let's say when this comes out on a Saturday and we're, you know, younger. I mean, this is a fun time. Like just the interplay, you know, when they're at the horse thing, when he's like Grace Jones shows up to the glass thing and they're looking at each other after the fact that they just chased each other up the stairs thing. She got out with the glider, you know, cool things like that.
And those are, I mean, that's the thing. There's a lot of those little tiny plot holes in this film. A lot of them, more so than any other film. And let's start at the beginning of this one, because this one I'm going to kind of go through. Let's just get through the cast real quick, because there's a lot of them. And what I'm going to do is kind of just run through these and kind of give you, you know, who they are and how they got into this. So this movie first of all, was directed by John Glenn again. And he did, you know, the few previous ones. He's been a second unit director who, oddly enough, this movie is like with a fourth Bond movie with like a ski sequence in it. So you had...
That's true. I thought that at the beginning.
Yeah. So you had On Our Majesty's Secret Service. You had The Spy Who Loved Me. You had For Your Eyes Only. And then you had this one with ski sequences in it. So, and there'll be more later on. It's just, I don't know what it is with the Bond franchise and ski sequences, but you can also include, like, you know, bobsledding in this as well, because there's a few bobsledding sequences. Anyway, not in this one, but in past Bond movies. But John Glenn was a second unit director, so he directed those formers. Even when he wasn't directing the film himself, he would direct those sequences before. So for some reason, John Glenn was obsessed with ski sequences. So he did film that on this one. And so anyway, besides Roger Moore, you have Robert Brown coming back as M for the second time. And like I said, the last movie, he he was basically M for the first time because Bernard Lee had passed away, so he carried on as M. Lois Maxwell, who's been Moneypenny since the beginning of the franchise, and Dr. No was Moneypenny again. This was her last run as Moneypenny, and she was the last actor, besides Albert Broccoli, who was involved in the production. Obviously, she was the last actor who was attached to Bond from the beginning. So she was, and this was it for her. They thought it might be it for her, and obviously in Octopussy, which is why they had Penelope Smallbone in there. The one, and then she was just a one and done and gone. So this is Lois Maxwell's last run at Miss Moneypenny. You had Desmond Llewellyn, coming back as Q. Jeffrey Keane is defense minister, who has one of the dumbest lines in the history of any Bond movie, which I will get to in a second. You had Christopher Walken, who was the main Bond villain. He was Max Zorin in this. And oddly enough, like, Christopher Walken was the first Academy Award winning actor to star in a Bond movie. So I thought like maybe Robert Shaw would have been or something, but he never won an Academy Award, I guess, apparently, at least up to that point. So, well, not Robert Shaw in particular, because he was already dead by this point, but any actor up to this point had never won an Academy Award, and Christopher Walken was the first one when he won it for Best Supporting Actor for The Deer Hunter. And besides him, you had Stacey Sutton, who you saw on the last slide, was played by Tanya Roberts. And Tanya Roberts got the job after they kind of looked at Bo Derek. Priscilla Presley was actually going to do it, but then she had commitments elsewhere. Sharon Stone was even considered for the role, a very young Sharon Stone. But I ended up going to Tanya Roberts after Albert Broccoli saw her in Beastmaster. He wanted her to do it. And she was in one of the I don't know if she was in one of them, but she was in Charlie's Angels season, maybe more than one. But she was in that before she was in Beastmaster than this. But then after this, she didn't do jack crap, basically, until that 70s show. So then you have who you see here in the picture. You have Grace Jones, who is a big star kind of around this time. And she was as 80s as it gets, man. She's really brings up the 80s in this movie, too.
You brought up Rocky IV. I mean, she did date Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, she would date Dolph Lundgren, who had a little cameo in this film. And the only reason why he had a cameo in this film was because the person who was supposed to play his part, which was not even a speaking part, was didn't show up that day or was sick or something. And she always brought Dolph Lundgren on the set with her.
Well, that's awesome.
So Albert Broccoli the director was like, saw this guy. I was like, holy shit, let's put this guy in. We need a big Russian. Now he's not Russian, but like. Yeah. He played a Russian twice. He played a Russian here, then he played a Russian in Rocky IV. So they had him in it as a very small cameo. And Grace Jones, but she's pretty much, when she's on screen, it's hard to take your eyes off of her. Yeah. Like she's very magnetic in this movie. So like anytime, I'm not saying her acting's terrific or anything. But it's always something on screen. She very much steals a lot of scenes, and she's acting in the scenes, with Roger Moore and Christopher Walken. It's not like you're, acting with chumps or anything. Oh. So, but yeah, she was a pretty cool choice for this movie. Going back to, Christopher Walken's there as Max Zorin. David Bowie turned down the role of Zorin. He wasn't a Bond fan really at all, and he wanted to do Labyrinth instead. Sting also turned down the role. They asked Rutger Hauer to do it.
Oh, that would have been great.
That would have been kind of cool, yeah. And he turned it down. And they even, I think they tried to get Lee Van Cleef at one point. And but it ended up going to Christopher Walken, and it all worked out fine. It did. The thing is about this too, like, you can imagine Sting, you can imagine Rutger Hauer, David Bowie being him, but like Christopher Walken really killed it with this role too. So. Yeah. Anyway, beyond that, you had let's see, you had, but I'm trying to think of other Bond girls in the movie. Let me get to Alison Doody. So Alison Doody was in this as Jenny Flex. And Alison Doody, you would know later on from, she was in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where she also starred with the former Bond, James Bond, Sean Connery. And she was also in Major League 2. So that's kind of what you know her from. I always thought she was a terribly attractive woman. And it's a shame you didn't see her. You didn't really see her in much of anything after those couple movies. But I mean, for doing these 3 movies, it's a hell of a trilogy. You had Patrick Macnee, who played Tibbet, Sir Godfrey Tibbet, and he was kind of one of Bond's allies in this film for a while until Grace Jones him. But he was in the Avengers, the original Avengers series with Diana Rigg, who was a former Bond girl as well. So, and then you have in a role that was supposed to be a Felix Leiter role, and my brother just made a comment. Dude, I can't. So there's a line at the end of this movie where like when Zorin kills everybody and like Jenny Flex dies and like Grace Jones down there with Roger Moore and you see her floating, like her body floating by, and the way Grace Jones goes, Jenny, like that, like. So anytime you hear the name Jenny, I'll say Jenny like that. But like my brother's.
No, I'll always have that in my mind too. Now
this is so silly. No, I lost my train. Oh, so anyway, so the Felix Leiter character that kind of they wrote in because they wanted to bring in kind of an Asian influence to this, because especially out in California at that time, because this was filmed in San Francisco, a lot of it.
Yes.
Big, the Asian population was blown up out there, so they hired David Yip to play the role of Chuck Lee in this film, who is a CIA agent, and he's one of Bond's contacts he meets at the Fisherman's Wharf. And he was also another connection to the Indiana Jones franchise. He was in Temple of Doom at the beginning. He was the guy that got shot in the club.
He's laughing. He's like
by the guy who was he got
by
shot
the guy who is laughing. Yeah.
And he was like, saying, "Oh, I've been through the Avengers together, Indy, blah 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 blah." And he died quickly in that one. He dies in this one too, but he was also in this too. So, but yeah, and then there's Willoughby Gray. He plays Dr. Karl Mortner, and you find out he's kind of an old Nazi scientist, complete with a monocle and everything. Yeah, and he was based off of Joseph Mengele, who was a notorious Nazi doctor who did horrifying experiments to people during World War II. And that's kind of who he was based off of. And he's how Max Zorn's character was basically created. So that kind of, rounds out the cast pretty much. I'm not going to really go much further into that because there's a lot more to get into with this. You had Walter Gotell come back as General Gogol, and you had basically there was a Russian agent in this one too, who was Paula Ivanova, which I guess I should mention as well. And she kind of she's played by Fiona Fullerton, and she was kind of put in. I'll get into that a little bit later too. But she was put into this movie as kind of a Russian counterpart to Bond, who's going after the same microchip he is. So Walter Gotell, he's been in every Bond movie since The Spy Who Loved Me as the same character. And he was in, we brought it up a few times. He was in From Russia with Love initially, but as Morzani. But, he was still in the Bond franchise in this one. So good for him. But anyway, the beginning of this movie, Bond finds 003 dead in snow in Siberia, and he gets a microchip off of him. And this is also the second movie where, because the last movie Octopussy, you saw 009 at the beginning get killed. This movie in the the cold open, there's another 00 agent dead, and there's 003 this time. Although you don't see 003 alive ever. So he gets a microchip off of him and, escapes various Russian thugs on skis. And he kind of creates a snowboard out of a giant snowmobile ski, which kind of kicked off a big snowboarding craze in the 80s as well because of this, which is kind of insane. But yeah. Now, obviously, Roger Moore did not do that stunt, as this movie is not very good when it comes to the editing of the stuntmen. And that may be because there were so many different stunts that Roger Moore just could not do anymore. So there's a lot of, you'll see a lot of times where a stunt is happening, whether it's a jump or something of that nature, and you kind of see the stuntman's face instead of Roger Moore's.
That's where I was going to let you know how I find the movie to be ridiculously awesome. It's like almost like Naked Gun at times, because it's like you know it's not him. You can clearly tell, but
Clearly tell it's not.
It's still fun though.
So but the thing about this movie is like it doesn't get on with the main plot for a while. Like it does. There's a lot of stuff in this, what I call plot shoe leather, where like the Russians, like, the Russians don't like. I understand like the Russians are competing for this microchip. Basically, this microchip can resist an EMP, an electromagnetic, pulse that like nuclear, weapons give off when they're about to explode, which renders all electronics like microchips and things like that useless. So apparently, this is like resistant to that. So obviously, the British, like NATO, and then the Russians are trying to both get their hands on this technology. And they already had the technology, but they're trying to like basically monopolize it. So, but you really didn't need the Russians involved because they didn't really push the plot along. They made Zorn like a former KGB member and yada yada yada. But like the part of this movie that kind of drags a little bit are those scenes when like Walter Gotella, basically approaches Zorn and confronts him about this. That's the brief scene you see Dolph Lundgren in. And then you see with Paula Ivanova, that whole part, like the whole sequence with her in the hot tub and recovering, she thinks she recovered a cassette tape and all this stuff of Walken's plan and all that. It's just kind of like, all right, we don't need this stuff in the movie. We just get on with it. They could have written it differently. So they wrote this movie with that included, but the original story of this was called From a View to a Kill. It was a short story. That's why at the end of Octopus, you see James Bond will return in From a View to a Kill. Mm-hmm. But the only part of that story they took for this was the part that was filmed basically in Paris. That's the only part of the short story that's even,
in the movie.
Yeah, so they called instead of calling it From a View to a Kill, they called it A View to a Kill. But that's kind of why there's a little bit of a discrepancy there from the ending of the last movie, introducing this one. And also, like, so this plot, the main plot is a kind of a giant, it's a giant ripoff of Goldfinger. So Max Zorin, who you see right there smiling maniacally before he dies, he wants, his company manufactures microchips. And he wants his microchips to be the only business in town, much like Goldfinger wanted to make all the gold in Fort Knox radioactive to make his gold worth more. He wants to destroy Silicon Valley, where he says, now this is not true though, like where they manufacture microchips. So his microchips the only game in town. Now, Silicon Valley, and Roger Ebert pointed this out in a review when this movie came out. Silicon Valley at that time, I don't know exactly what it is now, but like they didn't manufacture microchips. Their microchips were manufactured other places all over the world, and they get them there and they program them and install them into whatever, but they didn't actually manufacture them there. So actually, when he's destroying Silicon Valley, he's destroying his best customers for his microchips. So that's another thing, like, we didn't really think about that. No, I didn't think about it either, but like if I didn't hear that Roger Ebert review, and I was like, oh, that's pretty stupid that they would have done that. But whatever, that doesn't make a difference. So anyway, that's the main plot of what Max Zorin's trying to do. You do have the horse, a lot of the stuff with you see a horse race, and they go to his stables, and that's where Bond kind of meets up and is trying to figure out if Zorin's involved. And this brings me to one of the dumbest lines ever. So he's having his mission briefing before he heads out to the stables.
Yes.
And so Jeffrey Keane, the defense minister, now mind you, he's the defense minister. He is M's boss. They're talking about, who could be behind this microchip caper and everything. And then Roger Moore, like James Bond says, well, let's start with Max Zorin. And then the defense minister immediately just impossible. He's like, Max Zorin's a leading French industrialist. Like the way he says that, he might as well be like, fuck off. There's no way that's him. It's like
I'm eating my tacos for dinner at the dinner table, and I'm listening to the part. And when he says that, I literally look up really quickly and I go, why did he say that like that? And then even everyone else pretty much goes, well, it could be him. We got to look at him. And he's like, well, no, be careful.
Yeah, he's like, be careful. But let me say something about the defense.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is the guy who used to play bridge with Drax in Moonraker, okay?
Uh-huh.
So he didn't suspect Drax for anything, and now he didn't, now he doesn't suspect Max Zorin. So this dude's like 0 for 2 on Maniacs. So like,
that's great.
How he kept his job, I don't know. But the way he said it so dismissively and so loudly at first, it's like
only a couple things that I took away that I wanted to talk to you about, and you just hit one of them.
It's like the Sicilian guy in Princess Bride. He's like, it's inconceivable, It's like the way he's just like, there's no way. Yeah, well, guess what? There is, and it can cause a lot of trouble. So he obviously didn't know how dangerous Christopher Walken is. So, but yeah, anyway. So, but in this movie though, this movie has great action sequences in it. That's one thing it does have. Even if the whole stunt double thing is visible through of it, dude, the Paris scene, when Mayday assassinates his French contact he's discussing, when there's the girls doing the little butterfly show. This is one of the silliest
butterfly shows.
This is one of the silliest assassination attempts in the history of all cinema. You couldn't do anything else but use the floating butterflies, which are on fishing line, and whip it into this guy's neck, which must be a poisoned hook into the guy's neck. And
real quick, I found it funny that what I found funny was the one guy runs out and kills the other guy, and then he's like, all of a sudden the butterfly's like, and nobody looks up there and goes, what the hell's, and then all of a sudden it just goes right in his neck, man.
It goes right in his neck, and then and no one stops. No one sees anybody in the back doing it. Grace Jones is, way after he's dead, you see her run out. She didn't just like hit him and then like take off. Mm-hmm. She hits him. They react to it. Bond's looking around. Oh, there she is. Then she turns around, like runs out.
That's true.
So it's one of the most absurd things ever. And they had to have known like the whole plot for this. Oh, he's gonna meet him here. There's a butterfly show. It's gonna happen at 6 p.m.
Butterfly show.
So we're gonna use this. I want to poison that hook in the butterfly. And I'm gonna whip it in this dude's neck. Like, first of all, how did she have the ability to, I'm gonna stop talking about this. This is just, I told my brother.
I'm thinking a lot of stuff from that scene too. I'm thinking of that scene. Is just,
if you really want to hear something funny about it, like, so the How Did This Get Made podcast with Paul Scheer and Jason Mantzoukas, and mm-hmm. they do this crossover episode with these two guys from the James Bonding podcast, mm-hmm. and they talk about this at great length, the whole assassination. It's hysterical. You should just check it out. But anyway, but it's a great chase, and he chases her up the Eiffel Tower, and she does this jump off the Eiffel Tower, and she, turns into like, she basically parachutes her way, onto a boat and everything, and she gets with Walken. But what, Roger Moore chasing and jumps onto the stuntman, jumps onto the elevator, gets down to the bottom on the ground,
ridiculous.
Steals a guy's cab. The car gets cut in half. The front half he is still driving. Somehow, the front half of the car works just fine.
The way he jumped down onto the top of the elevator, and he's like, "Yeah, I made it." It was.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as the Jaws jump from one gondola to the Moonraker, but it was almost kind of on that level. And while we're talking about stunts, this was Bob Simmons, who I've mentioned several times. This was his last Bond film he did, and he's been around since the Connery era. And he was their big stunt guy, and he did a whole bunch of awesome things for him. And this was also his last one. It was the last Bond film for a lot of people, so they were important to the franchise. And I wanted to make sure he gets mentioned in this because he was one of them. Anyway, so the gadgets in this film too, kind of strange. You have Q with his little. Basically, it's like a pet robot that can drive around, and it has a camera on it. So this is it right here from the Museum of Science and Industry where I took this picture. And that's one of the main, it really doesn't play into the film at all until the end. But like, this is one of the things he's playing with the beginning during the mission briefing. He's showing Bond and M and the defense minister and everything. And then you have the most ungodly, awful looking pair of sunglasses ever put on screen, I think, that Roger Moore puts on to see through a window to see what Walken
that was another part that was
Roberts were discussing.
The best is when the guy comes up behind him and he goes, it takes him off like really quick, like as opposed to just being smooth and being like, "Hey, how's it going?"
There's nothing incognito about those glasses. He puts those things on. People are gonna be like, "Who is that motherfucker with those weird glasses on?" But okay. And speaking of sunglasses, Grace Jones also has a pair of ridiculous sunglasses too that she puts on in one of the 8 million blimps that apparently Max Zorin owns, because there's more than one blimp in this movie. So she puts those on, and one's like, you know, an oval, horizontal. The one's an oval, vertical. It's just like, hey, it's 1985, man. So that's kind of it goes the times.
Rolling with.
Yeah, exactly. So but so yeah, you know, there's a lot of great action sequences. The horse chase, or the horse riding, I should say, sequence with Bond and Christopher Walken, and then you have you know, they're getting out of in San Francisco. They're getting out of like City Hall, and that's when, you know, you really get the bad Stacey Sutton character, Tanya Roberts acting, which is yelling James 1,000 times, and you know, you have the fight in Stacey Sutton's house when Bonds has the rock salt gun, and but you get a decent fight sequence out of it. You can tell like Roger Moore's a little aged, and he's very, you know, stiff in his movements when he throws punches and stuff like that. But obviously the stuntmen did a lot of it, so it doesn't really matter. But there's really not a lot of chemistry between those two in this film, unfortunately, and it probably has a lot to do with the age difference. He was over 20 some odd years older than her, so it really, you know, it just didn't look real. It just didn't look. You just didn't buy it, you know. But I'll tell you what, he banged more chicks in this movie than any other movie he was in, I think, because it was 4.
At dinner tonight, I actually stated that to my wife. I go, "Do you think in movie history, I didn't include this, I included all the movies, who's gotten more women than James Bond?" I mean, and in this movie, he's really tacking the numbers. The numbers are, I think, what's the one line? And I repeated it too. He says, when he first goes to the horse thing or whatever, I think is when it was, right around that time, is he sees her when she goes and signs the check in there with Zorin or whatever. And he's pretty much like, I want to see what she's about. And the one guy's like, "We're not here for that, James. We're here for something else." And he's just smooth, man. Real smooth.
It's like an Octopussy when they were at the auction, and he was like, he's staring, he makes a comment about that girl, and he's like, you know, another guy who's at the auction with them, he's like, you know, "Stay focused, we're here for this," or whatever. It's just Roger Moore. His mind's in the gutter all the time. So and that's fine. But like they said, you know what? Well, he's 57 years old, so let's have him sleep with 4 women that are a lot younger than him. Because the first girl was in the little iceberg, you know, boat in the beginning, and then the second one was Grace Jones, who took care of him personally, and the third one you had Paula Ivanova, the Russian agent, in the hot tub, and when the bubbles were tickling her, Tchaikovsky, and then you had, you know, Stacey Sutton at the end in the shower. So it didn't matter. He's 57, man. He was still getting it on. So good for him. A good way to go out, you know. But yeah, the main thing about this, though, the great best thing about this movie definitely is Christopher Walken, the way he plays this absolute psychopath. I mean, this is a guy who this is the quintessential 80s nut job, who not only is a plotting genius, which with the writing in this movie, that's really making a stretch there. But when he kills people, dude, he's laughing his ass off while he kills people. He shoots in point blank range, and he kills a guy at City Hall, and he telling Bond how a genius of a thing he is. You know, he said, I forgot what he said. He said something to do with ingenuity, like something like, you know, on the spot ingenuity, something to that effect. But the guy he shot was Daniel Benzali, actually, who I remember him for the first time I saw that guy, besides this, because I didn't realize it was him in this, was in Murder at 1600. He was the bald security, head of security.
Oh yeah.
but that's the same guy. He was in City Hall. That's who Zoran shot and killed.
Really? I didn't
Right
even
in
know
front
that.
of Roberts and Roger Moore there.
I saw Murder at 1600 at the movie theater. I remember that.
I always liked that movie.
That's a good one. It's a good one.
So, yeah, and he, and he shoots him and brags about how much of a genius he is. And then at the end, or towards the end, when he's down in the mine, when they're getting ready to blow up the fault line, because that's how they're going to do this. They're going to explode. They're going to detonate. Basically something that's going to trigger an earthquake, and it's going to flood, like bring Silicon Valley down and flood it and everything. So when they're down there, he starts murdering all the people working there, including all Grace Jones's women and all that stuff. That's when Jenny Flex was when Jenny died. So, but he's shooting him. He's laughing his ass off, dude. But he's shooting him. And you saw like the picture you had up there earlier, them on the Golden Gate Bridge at the end, just before he's about to fall to his death. He's laughing there.
Oh, he's crazy.
He's always laughing. He makes a little comment, like, this is gonna hurt him more. It's gonna laugh more. It's gonna hurt me. And then he's like, he keeps like this laughing about things. His plan's been, no pun intended, blown up.
Yeah.
Because Grace Jones lived, and then since he betrayed her, she ended up betraying him, and that's how they got the bomb out of the mine. And she sacrificed herself, and then he's still sitting there laughing about things. So it's crazy, but it's also very funny. But that's a killer sequence at the end too, when they're on that bridge. That's pretty cool. That blimp ties. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's so ridiculous that they could swoop down in a blimp and pick up Stacey Sutton like that. He's like, she didn't hear it coming. She's yelling, James, running to the mine, and he's not even like, the fuck out of the way. He's not saying anything. He's just like, or he's like yelling, Stacey, and then she doesn't hear him or whatever. And then like the blimp a giant aircraft just sneaks up behind her, and he scoops her up, So it's
a great way for more to go out, Big blimp.
Yeah. And he gets in a fight on as you can see on the actual cover here on the Golden Gate Bridge itself. So because the blimp gets caught up in it, and Walken eventually comes out with an axe and tries to kill him, and gets him.
I think that's why I like it.
Doctor, I swear to God, at the end, like so Dr. Mortner, for some reason they have dynamite on board the blimp. Figure that one out. And he lights the dynamite in the blimp and starts carrying it around. He's going to carry it out there and throw it at Bond, and hopefully it explodes the exact same time it goes by. That's what I'm saying. It's ridiculous. But then he ends up untying the blimp, and they fall backwards, and then it's like a Marx Brothers sketch where they're just bumbling things around. And then it almost looks like Mortner's like smiling at the end, like it just blows up and everything. So, this movie is just it's a wild ride, dude. And but it's a good time, like other movies. Yeah. Octopussy was like that. This was like Octopussy on steroids.
Wow.
So it's a good time, man. And it was a great way for him to go out. And it was good. It was time for him, obviously, because I couldn't imagine him coming back 2 years later and doing another one. Huh. And obviously he couldn't imagine either. The only reason why he came back and did this one because they said, "Hey, here's $7.5 million. What do you say?" Okay, I'll do it for one more go. So that was the end of the Roger Moore era. That was movie number 7. But yeah, we haven't gotten the music yet. This is the first. So Duran Duran did the title sequence for this one, and basically it was funny because every previous movie, and we said this last week, from Man with the Golden Gun was kind of the last banger of a Bond theme. So you have A Spy Who Loved Me, you had Moonraker, you had Fear Eyes Only, you had Octopussy. They're all kind of like love songs, which is what I like in the Maurice Binder background. I know you're not a big fan of All Time High.
Yeah.
One of these days, I'm just gonna
blast. We're gonna go for a ride. That's all you're playing, just blasting.
I'm just gonna beat you to death with Rita Cooley. But so anyway, this one is actually the first probably good banger since Live and Let Die, his first film. Because Man with the Golden Gun, like that song was kind of bleh,
I want the Alice Cooper. I still want the Alice Cooper one that you told me that I did not know about until we did. That should have been.
That was so good. That's so much better. But yeah, this is the first one, and it was a good song.
It fits the movie. It fits the movie. Like what's cool is the beginning of the movie when it plays. And honestly, before watching it here, it had been a long time since I'd actually heard the song, and I don't know what song I had in my head because when it started playing, I go, "Oh, Dance into the this is the song," and the song is the ultimate banger.
But that's why they started doing this, because a lot of these songs started hitting the Billboard charts. So it was a good one, and the bass player John Taylor from Duran Duran.
Yeah.
He approached Albert Broccoli at a party or some gathering they were at. He was like, "Hey, when are you going to have someone really good do your theme?" Which I was like, that's kind of a shitty thing to say about some other people who've done it. Like, yeah, how can you? I mean, say what you want about Paul McCartney. Either way, like they're not as big as Paul McCartney, so I don't know why he was like, when are you gonna have someone good do this? That's a pretty ballsy thing to say. But Albert Broccoli kind of liked it. He's like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Let's do it. And John Barry.
I want to be honest with you on this James Bond podcast today. You just throwing around John Taylor's name like that, and that's what has impressed me tonight. That is because not everyone knows who John Taylor is in Duran Duran. They know who Duran Duran is. Not a lot of people even know there's a second Taylor in the band, Andy Taylor, but it's a great song. It's just really good.
It's a good song, and it works really well. Like Maurice Bender, did the title sequence again for this, and it really, with the glowing of the neon and everything in this, it worked great for it. So, like I said, I've always been partial to the Octopussies and the Spy Love Me Moonraker, like those types of songs for the Roger Moore films. I've always kind of liked that for James Bond, but this one kind of brought it into kind of a different area. Those songs that I liked that I just named kind of never were in the Bond franchise again, those types of songs, because going through the Timothy Dalton ones, even, I mean, maybe not even License to Kill, I wouldn't even consider quite like that. Patti LaBelle did that one. I don't know if it was. Well, maybe you could. But that's the closest one, though. Once you get into the Brosnan ones and then the Daniel Craig ones, none of them are like that anymore. But this Duran Duran one was pretty good. And the next movie had another very 80s song to it, but it wasn't nearly as good as this one. So, but it worked with it, and everyone liked it. It was popular. And dude, this song, and the thing about doing this podcast, that song's been in my head so much at work now. Just when I'm just doing things, all this song will just be in my head. So
great.
But yeah, it was good, and like I said, it was a good way to go out. And I like the movie. It's fun. It's not a good film. It's not a good feature motion picture, but it's entertaining. So people have different ideas of what good movies are. If they're entertained, they think it's good. And sometimes it's like, artistically, you sacrifice stuff for some fun. And that's kind of what they did here. But it is kind of weird that this film, as crazy as it is, had the first Academy Award winning actor in it. I did not know that for such a long time. I never even thought about that. And I was like, because I was sure somebody,
Donald Pleasance hasn't won. He should have won.
Donald, and so now I don't, like I said, from 1985 until now, I don't know if there have been actors who were, because didn't Sean Connery win for the Untouchables or something like that too, or
he might have,
or he won.
I don't want
to. He maybe won something. I don't know, but either way, and like I said, I was kind of shocked, like. Up to when Robert Shaw died in 1979, but he didn't win any awards, Academy Awards either up until then, with all the stuff that he's done and been in. But he was also a big stage actor too. So, but
best supporting actor, The Untouchables, yes.
Okay, so after this movie was made, Sean Connery was won an Academy Award.
Yeah.
But up until this point, So Doctor No was 62. So 1980, 23 years, of Bond films, and there were not one Academy Award winning actor or actress in this.
Crazy. What kind of trivia you got over there for this movie?
So one of them I blew already with the Zoran Industry thing. So that one we already discussed. That's why they put the disclaimer at the beginning. One of them I have here too is I want to tell this one because there was a Star Wars tie-in from Fear Eyes Only that I forgot to even mention, and I am ashamed of myself. So I'm gonna go back to Fear Eyes Only real quick. There was a guy at the casino table named his name is Paul Brook. He was playing at one of the tables when Bond meets the Countess, and he was also in Return of the Jedi as the Rancor handler that cried. He died. So that was kind of funny that he was in that. So when like I said, I'd be remiss if I did not mention that one because I think that was a kind of a big swing and miss on my part. So anyway, former Senator Dianne Feinstein, she was at the time mayor of San Francisco, and she was a big Roger Moore fan. Roger Moore was her favorite of the three guys that played Bond up to that point. And so she granted all the necessary like permits to film in the city and everything. So they got to do what they did on that fire truck sequence and all that stuff. All the filming there because she was like, here you have kind of carte blanche because she loved Roger Moore so much. So that was kind of cool that they were allowed to do that. So if Roger Moore didn't act in this film, who knows what kind of access they would have actually had in San Francisco. So it might have been a completely different movie. Maud Adams, who has been in 2 Bond films, Man with the Golden Gun and Octopussy. She makes a cameo in this movie. Now, here's the tough. It's at the Fisherman's Wharf scene, but I'm not sure exactly because there's different accounts of this. Either she's getting off like a trolley, or she's in the background walking on the dock or something like that. You can't really tell if it's her or not, but it's her. According to Albert Broccoli, it is her because she was visiting Roger Moore because she was so friends with Roger Moore, and she was in San Francisco doing something, filming something, doing whatever that day. So she came to the set and she was like, "Hey, and so she had a little like background uncredited scene in that film. So she's the only Bond girl to appear in 3 different Bond movies, technically.
Very interesting.
Beyond that, so the movie Argo. Now this is based off of one person's account, so I don't know whether it's exactly true or not. I don't know why he make it up. The agent Tony Mendez, which Ben Affleck played in Argo. His boss asked him once he saw this film. There's a scene in here where Christopher Walken gets a shot of Roger Moore when he's in his office, and he does like a facial recognition thing and figures out he's James Bond 007 license to kill and all that. He asked Tony Mendez if they have any facial recognition technology like that as depicted in this movie. And then Mendez told him they didn't. And so he ordered them to develop that.
Oh, because of that?
Because of that.
Interesting.
So, like I said, there's the only account of this is Mendez's account. So we had to apparently just take him at his word. So, when I talked about the Russian agent, Paula Ivanova earlier. So Miriam Diabo, who would play the Bond girl in the next movie, Living Daylights with Timothy Dalton, she actually auditioned for that, but they thought she was a little too young for it. So they gave it to Fiona Fullerton. But none of that would have happened if the original plan would have basically gone through. The original plan of Paula Ivanova was supposed to be Barbara Bach coming back as Agent XXX from The Spy Who Loved Me.
Okay.
She was supposed to be that Russian agent that he sees again. That's why Roger Moore knows who Paula Ivanova is. And they're like, she's like James Bond. And he's like, no. Because it was originally supposed to be Barbara Bach. And she was like, oh my God, James Bond. That's why they went in the hot tub and did what they did and everything. It was supposed to be Barbara Bach doing that. But she wasn't interested in reprising that role. So they basically had to cast it as a brand new agent and a brand new person. I think that's pretty much all I have for that. Oh, and so one more thing I wanted to mention, actually, the snowboard sequence on there. So there's a guy named Tom Sims, and I guess he started creating snowboarding. I mean, this is kind of back in the '60s or something like that. But he's the one that came up with the idea of Bond using that, or he actually performed the sequence because he was a snowboarder. Even though snowboarding wasn't really a thing, it's something that he did kind of personally. He's the one that actually got on that snowmobile ski and did the snowboarding sequence.
Oh, okay.
The snowboarding wasn't, like I said, it wasn't really a thing at that time,
Well,
but it started becoming a big thing after this Bond movie came out. So he was the one that kind of made all of that happen. It was his idea. It was him performing the stunt, and it was kind of because of him that snowboarding kind of took off. So that was kind of, and that's all because of A View to a Kill as well. So it was kind of interesting that, two different things like snowboarding, facial recognition technology at the CIA, just stuff like that was inspired, or it came to be because of A View to a Kill. So that's kind of a good part of its legacy.
that's really cool. That's it. When you say it like that, it's got a lot of good points. Of course, as you said, not the best made, best, Academy Award winning film, but fun, lots of fun.
It's
Christopher
fun.
Walken's great.
Christopher Walken's great. Like I said, Grace Jones is pretty magnetic on the screen, but her acting, she's not really a great actress, and it's kind of hard for her to deliver lines. And I mean, like I said, it's and like I said, they rip off a lot of things on Goldfinger. Even that when Grace Jones kills that guy, doesn't want to go along with Zorin, who has his whole presentation in the blimp, just like Goldfinger had his in Goldfinger. The one person doesn't go along with it, they just kill. They just kind of rip that whole thing off. Like I said, there's things like that. You kind of look past them. Tiny Roberts is just awful in this, but like it's they just wanted some eye candy for him, and that's what happened. At the very end, they also did the one thing I guess I should have mentioned at the very end, they did since Lois Maxwell and Roger Moore were leaving the franchise for good. They did a little thing where like Lois Maxwell is, has a tear in her eye, and it's supposed to be because they didn't know if James Bond was still alive or not, but she really had that tear in her eye and stuff like that to mark that that was her final, curtain call as Miss Moneypenny, even though she wanted to come back in the franchise as being promoted as M. She thought it'd be kind of cool, but then like Albert Brock was like, no, because Bond wouldn't take orders from a woman. Like that's literally like what the logic behind that was. But anyway, it was her last go around, and then Roger Moore's last thing he does is like toss the towel, which was to signify him throwing in the towel as James Bond. So that's it. I'm throwing in the towel, Roger Moore. And we'll move on to Timothy Dalton next time.
Cannot wait. We will be on to Mr. Timothy Dalton next time, which we will only sadly have two of pictures of his, but still a good time nonetheless. Thank you, Adam. This was a good time tonight. We had some fun. We got to talk some Christopher Walken. Got a lot of stuff in here tonight. I think we've also graced our longest episode tonight. We are at an hour mark, which we really went into some good stuff here. So please tune into everything else that is on the Sadistic Penguin Studios .com YouTube channel. Tomorrow we will be back with At the Show. We're doing our best book to film releases, the best in history. Obviously James Bond is a book to film, so that's been cool to go through on here, but wait till tune in to see what we do tomorrow. Also check out the Hookup on Music. I got word that in 2 weeks on Wednesday, so 2 weeks from tonight and a day behind on Wednesday, Mike's going to be joining me to come on to the Hookup on Music. We're going to talk some tunes. That's going to be really good. But till we get to that point, sadly, last night, the amazing Steve Cropper passed away. He was the guitar player in the Blues Brothers film. He also was on Stax Records. Lots of good stuff there. So we're going to be talking about that this week. So tune into that. And also go back and tune into the Frame by Frame with my At the Show podcast partner, Yumper and Cotton. They talked about the old Running Man and the new Running Man. I have not seen the new Running Man yet, but it didn't do so hot at the box office. So we'll
imagine it being as good as the old Running Man, but
it's tough. It's really tough to recreate something like that. And the problem that I have a little bit is they were wanting to make it more like the book. That was the thing about the new movie. And what they did is they totally changed the ending to the book in this new movie. So if you wanted it to be like the book, which you said that the original wasn't really like, why did you go and change it to a more family friendly ending is the problem. I don't like that. I don't like when things get changed to what it really is supposed to be in the book to a family friendly ending, but we'll see.
The first thing I thought about was when like they redid Rollerball.
Yeah. And I know how much you love the original. That's a case in point right there. They're trying to push Chris Klein on us like he was James Caan. Get out of here. Kidding me. But 2 weeks we'll be back, so please tune in, and we'll be talking some Timothy Dalton. So until that time, Adam, you take care and have a good rest of your week. Go all of our favorite sports.
Go Bears! Teams. Let's go Bears this Sunday.
It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good game. I can't wait, and we will talk to you guys all soon.